Thank you for tuning in. My name is Morgan Hendrix. I am a senior at Meredith College, and I would like to present to you my senior thesis titled, Is This Being Graded? A Mixed Methods Evaluation of Academic Motivation. First, for past research, Ryan and Deci defined the terms intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and the ways motivation can manifest in academic settings. Intrinsic motivation was operationally defined as, quote, doing an activity in which the inherent satisfaction of the activity serves as the motivator. For extrinsic motivation, it was defined as, quote, performing an activity to attain some separable outcome. Additionally, Ryan and Deci found that the need for autonomy on the part of the students was crucial for establishing intrinsic motivation. External motivators such as praise and grades were found to potentially alter the source of motivation from intrinsic to extrinsic. Ryan and Deci concluded that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation can be found in a myriad of academic scenarios, and a student can exhibit both forms of motivation. McMorran and colleagues analyzed student reactions to the implementation of gradeless learning environments at a Chinese university. 7,400 students in China were given the option for gradeless learning for their first year to either receive the marks of distinction, pass, or fail for each of their classes. Grades would not affect their GPA. Administrators aimed to reduce stress for the first-year students, facilitate a smooth transition into college, and encourage students to explore all academic options. Surveys and essay responses were collected. Results showed that students reported taking academic risks, maintaining high GPA, and adapting to university life as perceived benefits of gradeless learning. Rillis-Leiper and colleagues studied the benefits of a grading system without the use of numerical points. Rillis-Leiper and colleagues introduced the concept of gradeless learning to persuade educators to adopt this grading framework. A points-free grading scheme must be, quote, have clear course objectives, practical descriptions of letter grades in relation to those course objectives, have frank and honest conversations with students about the course goals, and meaningful documentation of student performance. Discussed benefits of points-free grading schemes included increased autonomy within students, alignment between grades and completion of course objectives, and an increase in intrinsic motivation. The purpose of the present study was to examine academic motivation in gifted students at Governor's School East, which for the duration of the presentation I may refer to as GSE, which is a 5.5-week residential learning program for rising high school seniors. The hypothesis of the present study stated that participants would exhibit low levels of amotivation and higher levels of intrinsic motivation as compared to extrinsic motivation. Qualitative data collected from student interviews was expected to align with quantitative results. The participants were 49 incoming high school seniors studying social science at GSE. Participants were chosen via school nomination, followed by an application. Grades and tests did not exist at GSE. The participants were also not compensated. The materials included the Academic Motivation Scale, fondly known as the AMS, a brief demographic inventory, recording devices, highlighters, colored markers for coding, transcription software, and SPSS software. The procedure in terms of the quantitative data collection, data were collected in 2 waves, week 1 and week 5 of GSE, to study the construct longitudinally. Surveys were completed during class time with the social science cohort only. Participants received a packet containing 7 other measures and a demographic inventory, in addition to the academic motivation scale. The AMS was a 28-item scale that included 7 subscales measuring intrinsic, extrinsic, and amotivation. Intrinsic motivation subscales included 12 items, including the subcategories to know, toward accomplishment, and to experience stimulation. Extrinsic motivation subcategories included 12 items, which included the subcategories of identify, introjected, regulation, and external regulation. Amotivation had only 4 items and had no subcategories. All questions were prompted with the statement, why do you go to school? All of the students had to rate on a 7-point Likert scale, 1 being does not correspond at all, to 7 corresponds exactly. One of the sample questions reads, because I experienced pleasure and satisfaction while learning new things, and this was an intrinsic motivation item to know. Procedure for our student interviews, which was our qualitative portion of the study. Lab members conducted brief interviews with participants in the final week of GSE. Interview prompts and instructions were distributed to participants to read prior to the interview. Participants were audio recorded for data collection. Interviewers were responsible for recording and keeping track of the time. What motivates you to do well in school? Why do you work hard in school? Were student interview questions. In addition to what motivates you to do well at GSE, why do you work hard at GSE? In addition to the interview prompts that the participants were given prior to the interview, participants were given the opportunity to share final thoughts and comments that were maybe not covered in the prompts before the interview concluded. The procedure as far as transcription of the qualitative data, 21 interviews were initially transcribed manually by lab members, and then a software known as Transcribed was used to transcribe 28 interviews. The analysis of the qualitative data was as follows. A primary researcher highlighted and coded emerging themes. I would like to note that the primary researcher did not conduct any of the interviews. A secondary researcher reviewed progress by the primary researcher and suggested condensing or rewording themes. A third and final researcher reviewed all progress made by the former two researchers and confirmed all 4 emerging themes. The participant checking procedure was as follows. 22 participants consented to give contact information for follow-up reasons. They were contacted via email to gather feedback regarding the themes found by the researchers. Participants were sent 1 initial email and 2 reminder emails to collect responses. Participant checking is ongoing. To reiterate, here is the hypothesis slide for the quantitative results. The quantitative results for T1 included participants presented a higher average score on intrinsically motivated items in contrast to extrinsically motivated items. Please see the slide for the exact averages. Participants scored the highest in the intrinsic motivation toward accomplishment and in the extrinsic motivation category, identify. Here are the quantitative results for time point 4. Participants presented a higher average score on extrinsically motivated items in contrast to intrinsically motivated items. Participants scored the highest in the intrinsic motivation to know out of a possible 7 and extrinsic motivation to identify, which is the score given out of a possible 7. A motivation levels stayed consistent with a mean of 1.43 out of a possible 7 in T1 and 1.58 out of a possible 7 in T4. Here is a graph to indicate the change in motivation over time. You can see there is a very large difference within the categories intrinsic motivation to know, intrinsic motivation to experience stimulation, extrinsic motivation identify, and extrinsic motivation external regulation, and very little change for A motivation. I wanted to note that I did run a repeated measures ANOVA and there was not significant change over time, and you can see the equation below. To discuss the qualitative results in the emerging themes, interpersonal influences, creating a better life, quantifying success, interest, and academic curiosity. Here is interpersonal influences, our first theme. Participants cited teachers, parents, siblings, and peers as being influences for their motivation. One quote reads, and I will read all of these quotes in the exact verbatim way that they were transcribed. My parents always emphasize school. It reinforces, I guess, my internal motivation from not wanting to disappoint my parents or not wanting to be in trouble with GPA. The second quote reads, it's like a mixture of pressure from my family. They have a lot of faith in me to do well, so I want to do that for them. The final quote for this theme reads, at my school we have really encouraging teachers, and I've had a lot of really good ones over the years, and I'd say I work hard for them. Creating a better life was the second theme. Students indicated college, getting a job, and improving their life to acknowledge family sacrifice as motivators for this theme. The first quote reads, My biggest motivation is definitely my mom. Because I'm a first-generation American, I'd be the first person to go to college in my family. I have to excel for my mom and the sacrifices she's gone through to be here. I think of like pressure coming from society telling me I need to go to college in order to have a good paying job, in order to succeed, in order to work and pay bills and retire. Here is the third theme. Participants mentioned maintaining success, proving success, and competition as pressures to perform well in school. The first quote reads, "So I've tried to keep that GPA for so long, and it's like that pressure, I've had it so long, I don't want to lose it at the last minute." The second quote reads, "A lot of people at my school don't really think that I'm able to get there, being college, so I want to prove myself to them." The final quote reads, "I think that people definitely do seem like they want to be the smartest person in the room here." Here is the fourth and final theme, interest/academic curiosity. Participants indicated deeper thinking, taking advantage of the Governor School East environment, exploratory learning, and passion for learning as motivators. The first quote reads, "That's like a topic I would never explore in school. I would definitely play it safe, but there's no reason not to take risks because there isn't any repercussion of failing." The second quote reads, "I want to know as much as I can get people informed and make a difference." Discussion for our results today. The quantitative hypothesis was partially supported. Participants did not know that high levels of motivation consistent. However, participants did exhibit motivation consistently over term point 1. Findings from consistent and extrinsic motivators. McMorran and colleagues was also supported, and participants reported academic exploration as a motivator in the gradeless environment. Here are some considerations for the research here. Generalizability and transferability, being that our population was selected and marketed as gifted students. These results cannot be generalized to all school settings when trying to apply a gradless environment. They also cannot be transferred to every single scenario either. Another consideration is COVID-19. That is the reason that we are doing the presentation in this style today. Our participants were difficult to read. Reorganization of priorities of COVID-19. Future studies to differentiate the native school and GSE in the surveys administered at T1 and T4, there was not a differentiation, so participants could have either Governor School East in mind or their native school in mind, and that was not made distinct when given the prompts at the beginning of the survey. Additionally, alterations to participant checking could be done. Hopefully, COVID-19 will not exist in the future if this study was to be replicated, so responses to participant checking may be higher. In addition, participant checking could be conducted closer to the data collection in the future. In conclusion, I would like to note the value of the present study. These results could encourage school settings to explore gradeless learning environments and further support the rationale for gradeless learning at GSE. I would like to thank Dr. Edwards, my thesis advisor and head of the Department of Psychology and Social Work. Without her, I would not be able to have the interaction with the Governor School students that I did, and I am glad that she allowed me that opportunity. Allison Kwasnica is our Meredith Emerging Adulthood Longitudinal Studies Lab Manager, and she conducted many parts of the study for data collection and coordinated that, so I thank her. And the Meals Lab, of course, they helped with transcription as well as analysis of themes. Bill Velto, who is the social science lead teacher at GSE 2019, he also was integral in allowing us to interact with the GSE students. And finally, the undergraduate research program. If you have any questions or would like to see a closer look at the slide deck, here's my contact information. And again, I'm Morgan Hendrix. Thank you so much for listening.